With every passing match day, the words earthquakes and defensive woes have become more and more synonymous. At a time where the Quakes seem to be trying to just crawl their way back into the playoffs, they look to the transfer window to get us back to winning ways. The first move is finally here. Ronaldo Vieira has arrived. My name is Kevin, I'm joined by Luis, and together we're the Quakesaholics. In this video, we'll be talking about the Quakes' latest transfer move, whether this is what we needed, whether it's enough, and how we expect this to impact how the Quakes play. So, Luis, I'll toss it to you first. What are your initial thoughts as you saw this headline make way?
To be honest, didn't know who he was. Obviously, he has Ronaldo's name, which is just like a funny little quirk about him. But I never heard of him before that. But just looking very like first thing I saw that he's a defensive midfielder, which is, like you said in the intro, something that is very much a concern for us at the Earthquakes.
Yeah, a little bit anticlimactic, but yes, I had basically the same reaction of who is this player? Looked into his background, seems like he's coming from second division in Italy. I was thinking, why are we picking up players from the second division? And then I thought, who picked this player? This isn't the kind of signing that we've seen Bruce Arena be making. This definitely feels more like a Chris Leitch kind of signing, at least to me. But of course, there's nothing wrong from like recruiting from a second division. I mean, if you think back at like the past, I don't know, 5, 10 years, if you ask fans who was the best center defensive mid in that time, I think a lot would say Judson, and he came from the second division of Brazil. So who knows? Maybe this is another hidden gem kind of thing. But yeah, definitely the who is this was true for me as well. Then looking further into who this player is, who his history is, seems like he's played all over the place. Came up through the academies in Europe, in Portugal, which is similar to Bruno Wilson, but from the rival team there. We don't have much information on what the actual terms of this deal were, so that's a little bit disappointing. It's kind of hard to say if this move was good or not, just without having all the info. But if you look at some of the numbers we pulled up from FootMob, in terms of defensive profile, because it seems like this is what the Quakes are going with this player, I would say he's somewhere between Harks and Mark Anthony Kaye. Some of the statistics are clearly better than Harks when it comes to defense, but at the same time, they're clearly lower than Mark Anthony Kaye, which I think for me kind of calling the question like, okay, what is the responsibility of this player? I don't know if this is a player that we're going to be necessarily building around. I definitely do think that if this was a high value signing, they would have said so. They would have said, hey, this is going to be like a designated player, for example. This is going to be a TAM level player. But because we don't have that, I'm expecting I guess my expectations are tempered, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but I think also, like you said, it does make evaluating this transfer difficult because we don't have all the information in terms of the financials that went into this signing. But I do think if I had to use a player profile comparison, I would say Judson would probably be the best comparison that I could give. It's a player that I think, just from the videos that I have seen of Ronaldo and the stats on his profile, it seems like he's a player that's really good behind the ball. He's willing to make an effort to go stop players. He has a good aerial presence. And honestly, I think that considering where we are in the season, I believe that this is a player mainly to just try to fix up those defensive problems that we've had and hopefully keep us in that playoff push.
Yeah, and I do think it's also worth noting that numbers and statistics, they can definitely lie. And while the FootMob numbers don't look spectacular, I do want to call out that this is a player that was playing for a team that was really struggling defensively last season. That team was actually in a relegation battle, not from first to second, but from second to third division. That duel actually never ended up completing. They played the first leg, and then in the second leg, I think it was around like the 60th minute, something like that, there was fan misbehavior, and they just straight up canceled that game. But his team won the first game, they're winning the second game, so by all accounts, they should have stayed up in second division had that game terminated. Where am I going with this? Players that have to play defensive roles on teams that suffer defensively have a history of just their numbers just get beat up. And I think a really good example for that is Carlos Gresso's numbers were terrible last season. And yes, Carlos Gresso definitely gives a knee-jerk reaction because we also do not think that was like a great or spectacular player. All I'm trying to say here is that the numbers can look bad for many different reasons, and I'm hoping that this was just a case of the team was holding him back, and that in a fresh team and a fresh new look, that he's going to be able to play to a much better level. Honestly, the only thing that really called out to me was that he didn't play many matches last season. Of the 18 matches that he did play, that only makes up like not even half of the 38 matches that a team plays in the second division of Italy. I looked at the injury report, and that basically answered everything I needed to know. In the 23 to 24 season, he missed 156 days due to injury, and then in the 24-25 season, he missed 78 days. You combine all those games, basically like half the matches that the team played across those 2 seasons, he wasn't really available for those games. So I think out of anything, that is what's most concerning. I hope that this isn't another Bruno Wilson problem where plays a couple games here and there, but isn't able to find continuity. But I definitely do agree with you that like this position was a position that the Earthquakes did need to find a player in.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have to agree with you. I think that the consistency obviously is a really key attribute for any player, and hopefully he can stay fit. I think yeah, that'd be like the worst case scenario is to just have him come in, get injured, kind of like a Noel Buck sort of situation where we just don't see much of him. Hopefully he can he's not too old either, 27 I believe. So it's not like his legs are just, beat up too bad, or at least they shouldn't be. So yeah, hopefully he can keep himself on the field and available.
In terms of how we envision him fitting this team, I have some ideas on how this can play out. I think there's going to be radical changes in terms of formation, but I'll let you kick it off first. How do you think that this signing impacts how the team will play?
I think the formation question is an interesting one. Assuming that we continue with our current formation, two center midfielders, I would imagine he would be paired up with a Leroux. This team has a lot of physical midfielders. I would also say Leroux can be a physical midfielder as well. But based off the statistics that we have to work with and the kind of player profile that he is, I think that if you keep Ronaldo Vieira on the field and like a Harks or a Mark Anthony K, you do lose something on the ball. And I think that's a concern. So I feel like ideally he is next to a Bo Leroux to just be there in case a transition moment happens and to kind of give a bit more protection for our back line.
I didn't even really think about how this would look without changing the formation. I kind of saw the signing and thought, okay, this is something to make an impactful change, a big change. And so I was actually thinking that we would either go to like a 5-3-2 or a 4-3-3. The 5-3-2, the way I envision that is we keep the same back line, 3 center backs, Vitor Costa on the left, DeJuan Jones on the right when they're fit. And then in the midfield, you just keep Harks and Bo and then slot in Ronaldo Vieira as a CDM. And then that's your way of like reinforcing this team defensively. The awkward part of that, of course, is that then how do you fit Espinosa? Because the two up top are most likely going to be Joseph Martinez and Chicho. I don't have a good answer for that. The only way I see that actually happening would be Espinosa right wing back and then putting DeJuan Jones on the left, which I guess in the short term it could, like it is probable, at least, well, it is a little bit more probable than leaving on, like Espinosa off the field, just because Vitor Costa is injured. Long term, I don't think we would do that because Espinosa, we've already seen right wing back, we just lose too much. So then the next place that took me is keep the 3 up top, Espinosa, Joseph, and then Chicho kind of in that left wing kind of hybrid role that he's been playing these past couple games, and then switch from 3 center backs to 2 center backs. Who those 2 center backs are, it's a toss-up, honestly. But then DeJuan Jones and Vitor Costa go into more traditional fullback positions. You keep the same 3 midfield that I mentioned earlier with Harks, Bo, and now Ronaldo Vieira. And then that is what the team looks like when we're defending, or at least not defending, but like in a neutral state per se. And then when we go into the attack, then what used to be wing backs, DeJuan Jones and Vitor Costa, they would go up the field like we see a lot of teams do. And then Ronaldo Vieira would drop back into more of like a center back role and turn that into a back 3. Is this something that, yes, there's a lot of handoff in terms of position on the field and in terms of responsibility, but I think this is something that we see pretty typically in clubs in MLS, in Europe, really all around the world. So I don't know why we wouldn't be able to play like this. This is a pretty big change with only 9 matches left in the season to make playoffs. So yeah, you might be right. Maybe we play it safe and we're just swapping out players here and there. But I think if this was the kind of signing that the Quakes are trying to build around, then I would anticipate a formation change.
Yeah, I think a formation change would be interesting. Like you said at the end there, I do think this late into a season, a dramatic change, like moving from a back three to a back two, would be a concern of mine. On paper, I do think that a formation change is probably how you get the best out of the teams. But again, that's just on paper. And in terms of how things gel over the course of these last stretch of games, the more likely thing I think is that we try to retain what we've been doing so far and then just put in a player like Ronaldo Vieira who has a profile that might better allow this current setup to succeed and not have the sort of holes and issues, especially transitionally, that we've been seeing the past, 5, 6, 7 games. I personally don't think that this is a signing that's going to, be a big game changer. I think it's just sort of something where, like you said, maybe Chris Leitch saw this issue, with Bruce Arena and thought, how can I reinforce the major issues of this team right now to hopefully make a good playoff push for the last couple of games, which, as we've talked about previously, are going to be pretty tough.
And yeah, so there's still 2 weeks left in this transfer window, and historically speaking, the Quakes always make their big signings right on like the transfer deadline. So to see this 2 weeks ahead of time, if this is the only move, then I think that's a pretty big disappointment. This is a team that at least this whole year has been premised on win now, and just the kind of signings we make, like Chicho, Joseph, those kind of signings that they're not necessarily players that we think have potential. They're already discovered players, and they're on the older side when it comes to soccer players. To be 9 matches away from the end of the season, to be right on the cusp of playoffs, and to only have 2 designated players, I think that goes completely against the win now premise that this team seems to have been building. With Hernan's departure, we still haven't filled in that high profile player. And looking at some of these transfer rumors, I mean, we saw Tom Bogert reporting that the Quakes were actually looking at Lucho Acosta, and that deal didn't go our way. That it looks like he's going to be leaving MLS. I see things like that, and I get disappointed because then it's like, okay, then this just feels like kind of like a backup option. And then we see more rumors like Rodriguez potentially making an exit and going back to Brazil. If this is the only move, I think this is a little bit underwhelming. Well, not underwhelming. It's just flat out disappointing. But if there's more to come, then I'm definitely still excited for the future.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you with that. Like obviously the defensive problems are a major one, and it is good that we're seeing reinforcement there. But as you say, especially if we lose Rodriguez, Hernan, of course, is a player that, despite maybe him not working out, was a DP signing, was a player with a lot of talent. To just kind of have those holes go unfilled would be a pretty big disappointment. Like you say, hopefully Chris Leitch can pull something off near the end of the window, or Bruce Arena, might be able to do so as well. But I would have to agree with you. I think that if we don't make the playoffs, especially if it's by a small margin, which I do think that it would be if we were not to, and we look back and we see that this was the only signing that we made, there has to be a lot of questions asked, and Earthquakes fans would be rightful in feeling aggrieved by that.
Yeah, if that happens, I'll say it now, Chris Leitch needs to get sacked. Like, straight up. There's already such a weird gray area between Bruce Arena and Chris Leitch's responsibilities, with Bruce Arena being the sporting director and Chris Leitch being the general manager. At least when it comes to like transfer policy, if this is the only move that happens, someone's going to be held accountable for it. I feel like we've made
Yeah.
too much momentum. We've done too much to just fall apart again at the end of the season. We've seen this too many times now under Chris Leitch.
Yeah, definitely.
But
Hopefully we can turn it around. Hopefully, Chris Leitch can pull something off, or all is well that ends well. If this is our only signing, we make playoffs. Hopefully not a wild card position. Just straight into the playoffs. I think that he does buy himself some trust, but definitely right about that. There, especially considering we were looking at Lucho Acosta for not for the first time, to just have something as underwhelming as this. I do think some action is called for.
But if disaster happens, we'll talk about it when that happens. The most important thing right now is the here and now. And Ronaldo Vieira is here. There's a lot of excitement, I would say. I'm just like reading comments from people. It feels like, at least on Reddit, Instagram, people are excited. And I think we should be. A new signing is always exciting. And I think now it's our responsibility as fans to get fully behind this player and let him prove that he can be a valuable piece to this team. There's 9 matches left, and there's still a lot to prove. And that's not just for this incoming player or any other incoming players, but every player on this team. We need to see more. The last 5-6 games have not been enough.
Yeah, definitely. You know, if he's anything like how Judson was for us, you know, when we were down in the dumps and you see Judson running, giving a full 110%, making tackles, giving us the ability to close out games, it'd be great. Hopefully he can do that, and I wish him the best of luck here in San Jose.
So yeah, I think that's all we had in this one. It shouldn't be long until we see him. I think there's still some like paperwork, some visa stuff that has to be figured out. I don't know if we'll see him as early as this Saturday against Vancouver, but hopefully by the next Vancouver match, we'll see him. But anyways, we'll be here to cover all those matches. And if you made it this long into the video, thanks for watching. See you later.